Sunday of the season, we call to mind the values and covenant section of the proposed revision of the Unitarian Universalist bylaws, which says, "Love is the power that holds us together and is at the center of our shared values. We are accountable to one another for doing the work of living our shared values through the spiritual discipline of love." Our opening hymn is number 21, "For the Beauty of the Earth." Please rise in body or spirit. Good morning. I'm Elliot Nassif. My pronouns are they, them, and theirs, and I'm your celebrant associate this morning.
And I'm the Reverend Meredith Garmon, Z-Zir, or he, him, interim minister.
Welcome to First Unitarian Church of Des Moines. Our church is located on land that has been home to various peoples in the last 12,000 years, including at the beginning of European encroachment, the Iowa, Sauk, and Meskwaki. This was also a home to the Carolina parakeet, extinct since 1918. As we enter this space, the ghosts of humans and other animals past are among us. Let us recommit to understanding the history of the land it occupies and to owning our part in the work of education, reparation, and healing for all species.
The purpose of this church is to associate ourselves together for the study and practice of morality and religion as interpreted by the growing thought and noblest lives of humanity, hoping thereby to prove helpful to one another and to promote truth, righteousness, and love in the world.
This bond of union is reiterated in our mission to grow ethically and spiritually, serve justly, and love radically.
It's a blessing you were born. It matters what you do. Your experience of the divine is true, and you don't have to go it alone.
Today is the 9th Sunday of autumn. The moon was new last Monday and is now waxing crescent.
And today is the Hindu festival of Chahath, dedicated to the sun god. Chahath Puja is traditionally 6 days after Diwali.
A special welcome to our visitors. If you are here with children, feel free to keep them seated with you or take advantage of our Wii worship space in the back of the auditorium where you and your child may play quietly with toys and books. Newcomers are invited to a UU Curiosity conversation on the first Sunday of every month. The next one will be on December 3rd, immediately after the service in the back of the auditorium. Please silence your cell phones during the service. If you're joining us via Zoom, make sure your mics are muted throughout the service.
Our theme of the month is interdependence. Our connection circles are the small groups that gather to explore the monthly theme and build relationships. It's a key way that we live out our mission to grow ethically and spiritually. If you're not in one, please sign up and become part of a group. See the back of your order of service. And if you don't have a copy of Connecting, our in-house monthly periodical exploring our themes of the month, please do pick one up from the basket just outside the doors. The Transgender Day of Remembrance and Resilience is tomorrow, November 20th. And to mark our observance, we invite Sarah Chang of our Transgender and Action Group for the lighting of our chalice. Sarah?
Thank you. Good morning. My name is Sarah Chang. My pronouns are she, her, or they, them. And I'm one of the co-leads of the Queer and Transgender Action Group here at First Unitarian. I have a brief message to share, the last portion of which is printed in your order of service as our unison chalice lighting words, so you might want to have that ready. Wrapping up Transgender Awareness Week tomorrow, as Meredith said, is Transgender Day of Remembrance and Resilience, a day set aside to honor the lives of those lost to transphobia. According to the National Center for Transgender Equality, since November 2022, in the United States alone, we know of at least 112 trans people who have been lost to violence or suicide, the vast majority being trans women of color. Their international estimate is at least 438. Their stories are many and varied, and I encourage you to look it up and read about at least a few of them. But they were all someone's children, friends, loved ones, amazing people just trying to be themselves. As we approach Transgender Day of Remembrance and Resilience, and also Thanksgiving or Thanksgrieving, we reflect on the treatment, lives, and deaths of people of color, Indigenous communities, those whose gender expression reaches beyond what society expects, and especially those who embody an intersection of these elements. Please join me for our unison chalice lighting words. We hold in balance remorse for the transgressions of the past, gratefulness for progress made, and hope for a brighter future. May light triumph over darkness.
This reading, Thanksgiving, is from Isabel Call. Although both Native American and Europeans had feasts expressing gratitude during harvest time, the Europeans who arrived on this continent were incredibly destructive to Native American communities. The Wampanoag man, often celebrated as a friend of the Pilgrims to Squantum, spoke English because traders had enslaved him and forcibly taken him to England. When he finally escaped and made his way back home, his community had all died from smallpox his captors had left behind. He was friendly to the Pilgrims who moved into the land of his people because none of his own people were left. He was able to find work with the Pilgrims as a translator and help them negotiate treaties. But as we know, treaties between European settlers and the indigenous residents of America have not been honored by the new arrivals. And although there's some evidence of a shared meal between Europeans and Wampanoag people in 1621, the holiday may actually have started a few decades later, in May 1637, when English and Dutch mercenaries attacked the Pequot tribe. They killed over 700 people, and the next day, the governor of the Massachusetts Bay Colony declared a day of Thanksgiving in celebration. Since then, various governors and presidents called for days of Thanksgiving to commemorate various events, but it didn't get formalized into an annual holiday until Abraham Lincoln chose a Thursday in November in 1863 to celebrate Civil War victories. The 400-year-old story we've heard about harmony between people of different backgrounds just isn't true. The United American Indians of New England have commemorated a national day of mourning every fourth Thursday in November since 1970. They write, "Thanksgiving Day is a reminder of the genocide of millions of Native people, the theft of Native lands, and the relentless assault on Native culture. Participants in National Day of Mourning honor Native ancestors and the struggles of Native people to survive today. It is a day of remembrance and spiritual connection, as well as a protest of the racism and oppression which Native Americans continue to experience," end quote. We celebrate Thanksgiving because gratitude is essential to human life, but grief is essential for healing our history of violence. It's really hard to be thankful and sorrowful at the same time, but this is life. Sometimes joy and sorrow come together. Please now join in the sung invocation. Words are in your order of service.
Good morning. My name is Birch Spick. My pronouns are they, them, and theirs, and I am your faith formation and congregational life coordinator. This morning, our story is adapted from a story called Honoring Life, a story of Beatrix Potter from the UUA's Tapestry of Faith curriculum, Faithful Journeys.
Beatrix Potter? The English Unitarian born in 1866 who wrote the Peter Rabbit story?
And Squirrel Nutkin.
And Benjamin Bunny?
And Mrs. Tiggywinkle, Jemima Puddle Duck, and a whole bunch of others.
I heard that as a child, Beatrix Potter was lonely.
Possibly. She did live in a large city, London, England, and the only child she had to play with was her brother, Bertram, and he was usually away at boarding school.
And she didn't go to school, right? So she had no school friends.
That's right. She had a governess that taught her at home, but not really a friend. There were no other children her parents would let her play with in their London neighborhood.
That does sound lonely.
But Beatrix was not as lonely as you might think. She had the friendship she felt for all the animals and plants she met on her rambles through the countryside. Beatrix's family took long vacations in Scotland and the Lake District of England. She brought the countryside back to London by taming wild rabbits as pets.
And she kept country mice in a cage, and also lizards, snakes, and even a pet bat. And she loved the outdoors.
She did. In the countryside, Beatrix spent many hours out of doors. She drew detailed pictures of the plants and the animals she found. She wanted to know everything about the natural world. She planned to be a scientist when she grew up.
But Beatrix Potter was born 157 years ago. Back then, it wasn't considered proper for a middle-class girl to have a job, particularly as a scientist.
And Beatrix's parents were very concerned that she grew up to be a proper young lady. So no one encouraged her to draw animals and plants, but Beatrix kept studying her friends in the natural world all on her own. The drawings and paintings she made were greatly respected by scientists who wanted to learn more about animals and plants and appreciated a close and careful look at nature.
I heard she was especially interested in mushrooms and mosses.
That's right as well. In fact, by observing these plants, she discovered that the lichen that grows on rocks and trees is actually a combination of moss and fungus.
That's pretty cool. But her scientific sketches of nature, even though they helped make discoveries, were not the same as having a real job as a scientist.
No. But when Beatrix was grown up, her loving attention to the natural world earned her a different success than she had ever imagined. In 1893,
The year she turned 27,
Beatrix sat down to write a letter to 5-year-old Noel, who had been sick in bed for a long time. She started her letter, "I don't know what to write to you, so I shall tell you a story about 4 little rabbits whose names are..."
I know! Say them with me if you know them.
Go ahead.
Flopsy, Mopsy, Cottontail, and Peter.
Beatrix Potter made up these rabbit characters based on rabbits she had watched closely and on her imagination. She drew Noel a picture of the 4 young rabbits and their mother. So began the tale of Peter Rabbit, which children have been enjoying for more than 100 years. Beatrix wrote and illustrated 22 more books, all about the animals that had been her friends in the countryside: hedgehogs, frogs, ducks, house and field mice, and squirrels. She knew them very well from spending time among them and observing their ways.
And those stories were very popular. So I guess she got enough money to allow her to be a scientist without needing any other pay.
Well, no, that would have required more than financial independence. But her earnings from her books did allow her to buy a farm in the Lake District, where she had always enjoyed spending time with her family. She raised sheep on her farm, and over time she bought more country land to keep it as a natural home for animals and plants, and not used for factory houses.
And that's how she was able, when she died in 1943, to donate 4,000 acres to the National Trust, an English organization that protects and preserves natural lands.
If you travel to England today, you can visit Beatrix Potter's farmhouse. You can walk in the countryside just as she did so many years ago when she was a young child. Yet you need only to open one of her books to meet the animals and plants she loved. By observing, loving, and drawing her friends, she preserved her connection with the world of nature for children like all of you and all of us to share.
Yay, Beatrix!
We will sing our children out now with the song pasted in the back of your hymnal. And we've had a couple of volunteers step up to offer childcare. So if you are here with any children 0 to 4, you may go out downstairs at this time as well. Go in joy, go in peace to greet the day. With open hearts embrace life's wonder. We will guide you, we will love you on your way.
Hi, my name is Janice Hawkins, and my pronouns are she, her, and hers. And as the Caring Ministry Coordinator, I'm inviting you to take this opportunity to express your care for the other congregants. As you may know, congregants and/or family members reach out to the church for needs that they may have, perhaps a birth, an illness, an injury, a death, or simply being overwhelmed. On a temporary basis, we respond to things such as offering rides to doctor's appointments or to church. We can provide meals or do light household tasks or helping with a move. And I've been coordinating these requests for a few months now with a list that really needs to be updated. And so if you've been on a previous list, please sign up again so that you can be part of the more current list. And if you've never been, consider this opportunity. You can sign up online. There's a link in the intercom, or you can stop at a marked table just outside of the gathering area here after service today or next Sunday. And Barb Glass and I will be there and be happy to have you fill out a form. Now, I should tell you, the form is short, and your answers will be short too. Okay, so it's not going to take you a lot of time to do this. I hope you'll be willing to lend a hand at this time of need. And this is just another expression of how we are here for each other. And I want to thank you for helping this resource grow.
Good morning. I'm Jim Cardy from the Pastoral Care Team. We are a community of memory and hope, a community of hands and hearts. We gather to share our laughter and our tears and to bear witness to one another as we journey through sorrows and joys. Jean Evans was hospitalized last week and has returned home to the Jewish Life Center. Alma Hatfield is scheduled for knee surgery on November 22nd. Naoma Loving, daughter of Crystal Patterson Loving, had surgery on Friday to repair a torn ACL and meniscus in her knee due to a soccer injury. It's not a sorrow, but a joy for her healing journey to begin. Cards are welcome. If you need contact information, speak to me or another member of the pastoral care team, or you can email. I'll have that email address for you. Let us share together now the names of anyone we know who could use some special care and attention. You may call the name out loud or type it into the chat. As we share these names, may the love of this community hold them all. May the light of our community shine on the broken places of the world. May we never look away when we are needed. May the grieving be comforted, the weary find rest, the broken places healed, and joy and laughter be abundant. We light 3 candles. One for the joys and sorrows shared aloud. One for those shared in writing, and one for those held silently among us.
Dear source of healing and wholeness, we call by many names. We're holding in our hearts Jean and Alma and Naoma and our hopes for their health and swift recovery. Weighing heavily on our hearts these days has been the horror in the Middle East. What if it were me, heart torn to shreds by a death caused by Hamas or a death caused by Israel? What if it were me, afraid to pick up the phone for fear that it will bear bad news about one of the missing? What if it were me trying to understand how people who live at vast distances from borders and vaster distances from possible enemies can fail to comprehend the immediacy and urgency and desperation when the enemy who has sworn to destroy you lives less than 70 kilometers away? What if it were me knowing in my bones that the Holocaust that happened under Hitler's regime was not an isolated blip, but a horror that has happened over and over? What if it were me trying to build a country based on the principles of democracy, equality, and justice, and struggling with the reality that those same principles in time make my own people outnumbered, unwanted, and exiled from the country we founded? What if it were me driven from the land of several generations of forefathers, enraged, resentful, jealous of Israel's growing prosperity, swept up in the movement to violently expel the invaders and reclaim what is rightfully Muslim land? What if it were me who passed on the determination for revenge at all costs to my descendants and their descendants after them? What if it were me who was a Palestine Muslim, convinced way is one of nations, yet knowing to oppose death. On all sides, humor from truth, from vilification. Not in either warring countries, expecting a negotiated nation settlement to work, imagining that it's possible to negotiate with terrorist extremists. What if it were me remembering the 6 million killed in the Holocaust and remembering the genocides in Darfur, Rwanda, Armenia, and Ukraine, and Namibia, and the killing field of Cambodia, the ethnic cleansing in Bosnia, the rape of a king in China? And me, convinced that some evils are so horrendous can only be stopped by mass destruction, even at the cost of innocent lives. What if it were me vowing that it will never happen again, not to my people, not to any people? What if it were me condemning Hamas's terrorist October 7 attack as heinous beyond belief, yet also shaken by the scale of Israel's response? What if it were me so certain that this is a time when violence necessitates greater violence for sheer survival? Or what if it were me equally certain that there must be a nonviolent path to security? Or what if it were me without any certainty, without a clue how to stop evil, without becoming evil? For it is me. I am all of those people, and they are me. Their passions mine, their needs mine, their grief mine, their felt certainties mine, their uncertainty and confusion mine. Their pain I suffer, their violence I commit. Us, those people. Yet we are universalists, USA. We do not know wise and skillful passion and peace for ourselves, everyone. We only know this is our aspiration to somehow facilitate peace, and it is in our minds. And for all that is today, a moment of silence. Amen. Comfort me, oh my soul. Comfort me, oh my soul. Stay with me, stay with me, stay with me, oh my soul. Stay with me, stay with me, stay with me, oh my soul. Religion is stories and music enacted in ritual. Our ancestors gathered around campfires. There would be drumming and dancing and chanting or singing, and there would be storytelling. The stories helped them make sense of themselves. The stories told the people's history. They would tell of how the world came to be and how the plants and animals came to be and how they themselves, the people, came to be. They didn't know how the world and life came to be, so they guessed, using imagination to fashion a tale that seemed to them to have some credibility, to make sense of their experience. And we do the same thing today. Long ago, people attended to the stories of the wise ones in long cloaks called shamans. Today, we attend to the stories of wise ones in white lab coats called astrophysicists. Our story today is that there was a singularity 14 billion years ago that expanded into the universe as we know it. Our story today is continually revised by the results of experiments that we designed for the purpose of learning things that would compel us to revise our story. The astrophysicist's story has a lot more math in it than the shaman's story of old. But our story, like the ones our first storytelling ancestors told, has at its heart mystery. We don't know what made the singularity happen, and our early ancestors didn't know what force had brought forth the soil and mountains and rivers, sun, moon, stars, plants, animals, and themselves. It all began in mystery. The old stories and the new story alike begin in mystery, and then it unfolds. When the unfolding involved something that didn't seem to fit what people could do, or what animals or plants could do, what the earth or sky or wind or fire or water could do, the storyteller brought in another character with an agency that could do what otherwise seemed undoable. We might translate the name of that character as Spirit or Great Spirit. It was something mysterious, and there were a lot of very different stories about it. But what the stories had in common was the great and mysterious agent knew things and wanted things. It had knowledge and desires and intentions. How else could mountains or people come to be except through the intention of some creative force? It turns out there is an answer to that question, but it's an answer with a lot of it. The stories and the music and the dance were done way or with ritual. There were ways maybe that our ancestors influenced wars, knowledge. There were ways connected to this mystery, powers and intent. It helped them with the mystery they couldn't control or influence. And we continue today to gather music, a little, and to tell stories about where we come from, help us know who we are. Different religions have different stories, different rituals, different moral codes, different music. Aren't so much different, all headed up. They aren't so much different paths headed up the same mountain as different paths headed up different mountains. But they are all religions, which means they have stories, music, and ritual to convey a sense of who we are, what is our place in the family of things, what is ours to do, and what we are here to try to be. Who are we? Where do we come from? And why do we share in practices of, at this time of year, Thanksgiving? Therefore, we will today retell the ritual story of Thanksgiving. It is that time of year, so let that story be today retold. But we Unitarians are not only a storytelling people, as all people are. We are also a story revising people, continually updating our story in light of new evidence, new understandings, and new sensibilities. Our openness to change and new evidence, our readiness to revise, is a distinguishing characteristic of our liberal faith. So when we retell again the Thanksgiving story, We will be considering amendments as we go. You will have the chance to vote on those amendments by raising your voting card like we do at General Assembly. Your voting card is your order of service. But first, a word from our sponsor.
Right. Oh, sorry, I forgot that. We come now to our offering. Contributions to our Faith in Action partners by members and friends may be made by scanning the QR code on the back of your order of service. Free Store helps provide household items to families recovering from domestic violence and other trauma. The Iowa Trans Mutual Aid Fund financially supports trans, non-binary, and gender-diverse Iowans as they access gender-affirming care. The living tradition we share draws on direct experience of transcending mystery and wonder that moves us to a renewal of the spirit and an openness to the forces that create and uphold life. Our religion reflects and informs our ethics and values. Our religion also reflects and reinforces the bonds that hold us together as a community, and something more. Together, we learn transcending mystery and wonder, how to directly experience it for ourselves, and how to open ourselves to forces of life. Together, we deepen those experiences and integrate them into our lives. So let there be an offering, for gratitude and generosity are both cause and result of our spiritual growth, and it falls now to us to renew our spiritual home.
I call this storytelling session to order. Storyteller, you may proceed.
Our story. The Pilgrims were not the first people to land on the shores of New England. The area was first discovered in 1524 by Giovanna de Verzano, who explored the Atlantic coast from Florida to New Brunswick.
The chair recognizes the delegate from Norwalk. Please come to the microphone.
Mixed chair, I move to amend. Giovanni di Verrazzano did not discover New England. There were people already there. Say instead, Verrazzano was the first European to explore the Atlantic coast of what is now called North America.
Those in favor of incorporating the amendment, please raise your order of service. The amendment is incorporated.
Let's back up further then and say who did discover this land. This region we call North America was discovered by peoples who came over the Bering Land Bridge about 16,000 years ago. They split into branches and spread across the continent. These were the discoverers of our land.
The chair recognizes the delegate from the south side.
Mixed Chairman, move to amend. These people did not discover this region either. There were animals already here, and I might mention in particular the Carolina parakeet, extinct in 1918. I'd nominate them as discoverers of our region.
Perhaps we should just remove the word discover altogether.
Oh yes, that's the amendment I propose.
All in favor of striking the word discover, raise your order of service. Amendment is incorporated.
As they split into branches and spread across the continent, one of the branches, about 14 or 15,000 years ago, became the first humans to inhabit the area we call Massachusetts. And then, in 1524, Giovanni di Verrazzano explored that area, and John Cabot and Jacques Cartier also charted in the vicinity. In 1609, Henry Hudson made his way up what we call the Hudson River. These explorers sometimes captured and enslaved natives, and they brought diseases. Europeans had developed immunity to these diseases, but the natives had not. The Wampanoag, for instance, in 1600, numbered 50,000 to 100,000, occupying 69 villages scattered throughout the region that is now southeastern Massachusetts and eastern Rhode Island. The plague from Europe killed up to 2/3 of them. Many were also captured and sold as slaves. In 1614, a Wampanoag boy named Tisquantum was abducted from his village, Pawtuxet. Tisquantum was sold as a slave in Spain, then escaped to England. After several years, Tisquantum was able to get back to Turtle Island, what we call North America. When he returned to his village, he discovered there were no other surviving Pawtuxet. The rest were either killed in battle or died of disease brought from Europe. And then, in 1620, the Mayflower landed at Plymouth Rock, bringing 102 pilgrims.
The chair recognizes the delegate from Clive.
I'll be ready in a moment. Mixed chair, point of factual clarification. Did these people call themselves pilgrims?
Fact checker.
They did not. Not until the 20th century did pilgrim come to refer to the people who came over on the Mayflower. They called themselves saints.
Well, it's disrespectful to call them something they didn't call themselves. I move we call them saints.
The chair recognizes the delegate from Beaverdale.
Mixed Chair, I oppose this amendment. It may be disrespectful to call them pilgrims, but it's disrespectful to us to call them saints because we're pretty sure they weren't.
Fact checker, was there another name?
They were Puritans.
Will the delegates accept an amendment to amend to call them Puritans?
I will.
The amendment is to call the people on the Mayflower Puritans. All in favor, raise your order of service. The amendment is incorporated.
These Puritans settled in an area that was once Pawtuxet, the Wampanoag village, abandoned because of the plague. The English did not see any Wampanoag that first winter at all. They only caught a rare glimpse of a fleeting shadow of the land's inhabitants until March 1621, when Samoset, a Monhegan from Maine, came to the village. The next day, Samoset returned with Tisquantum. Tisquantum had learned English during his abduction, so he could talk to the settlers and serve as translator. Tisquantum showed them how to plant corn, fish, and gather berries and nuts. The crop seeds the colonists had brought with them failed, so without the help of Tisquantum, also called Squanto, there probably wouldn't have been a harvest to celebrate that fall.
The chair recognizes the delegate from Polk City,
Mixed chair, I move to include what the Puritans wore.
which was
I don't know. Beats me. I was wanting to find out.
a fact checker.
The Puritan colonists did not wear black, large hats with buckles on them, nor buckled shoes. The 19th century artists who painted them that way did so because they associated black clothing and buckles with being old-fashioned. Actually, their attire was bright and cheerful.
I move to include that information in the record.
All in favor, raise your order of service. The information is incorporated. Pick up from there.
The harvest celebration of 1621 was not a solemn religious observance. It was a 3-day festival that included drinking, gambling, athletic games, and even target shooting with English muskets, a not so subtle way to warn the indigenous peoples that these colonists could shoot them. The Wampanoag chief, Massasoit, and 90 warriors made their way to the settlement in response to the sounds of gunfire. They thought the colonists were under attack, so they came prepared for battle to help defend the colonists. The Wampanoag were probably not invited, and the settlers were probably rather nervous having them around.
The chair recognizes the delegate from West Des Moines.
We've heard what the Puritans wore. What did the Wampanoag wear?
They were not wearing what is often pictured, woven blankets on their shoulders, large feathered headdresses. They wore breechcloth with leggings and perhaps 1 or 2 feathers in their hair in the back.
How long did the Wampanoag stay?
They stayed for 3 days, during the course of which they contributed a large portion, perhaps most of the food.
Was the 1621 harvest celebration in November?
November would have been much too late. It was sometime between late September and the middle of October.
So the first Thanksgiving then was in September or October?
The colonists celebrating in 1621 did not call their event Thanksgiving. For them, Thanksgiving was a day of fasting, and this was a feast, the opposite of a Puritan Thanksgiving observance. Calling any event involving white settlers in North America the first Thanksgiving overlooks the fact that for thousands of years before Europeans arrived, indigenous people throughout Turtle Island, North America, celebrated seasons of Thanksgiving. Thanksgiving is a very ancient concept to the First Nations of this continent. The 1621 celebration was a one-off that was not repeated and in any case wasn't thought of as a Thanksgiving.
Last question, and I promise to sit down. What is the source of the misinformation we have about the 1621 harvest celebration?
Fact checker?
Well, let me tell you. Everything we know about that 1621 feast came from a description in one letter by colonist Edward Winslow. That letter was lost for 200 years. After it was rediscovered, a Boston publisher, Alexander Young, in 1841 printed up the brief account of the feast. Young dubbed the episode the First Thanksgiving. White Americans, craving a romanticized story of their past, latched onto it. And that's the story of how we got the story.
Thank you. Storyteller, please resume.
The first European recognized Thanksgiving came in 1637, when Governor Winthrop of the Massachusetts Bay Colony proclaimed a day of Thanksgiving. That proclamation focused on giving thanks for the return of the colony's men who had traveled to what is now Mystic, Connecticut, where they had gone to join in battle. The thanks that was foremost in Winthrop's proclamation was thanks for their great victory. The roots of the American Thanksgiving holiday are a celebration of a massacre of hundreds of Native people, and it grew into a general celebration of genocide. For example, a proclamation of Thanksgiving in 1676 thanks God that the heathen natives had been almost entirely wiped out in Massachusetts and nearby. Thanksgiving proclamations a century later continue to be connected with war. In the midst of the Revolutionary War, the Continental Congress issued Thanksgiving proclamations each year from 1777 to 1784. Thus was the way paved for Abraham Lincoln in the midst of the Civil War to make Thanksgiving a U.S. national holiday. Lincoln set the U.S. national holiday of Thanksgiving as the last Thursday of November.
The chair recognizes the delegate from Johnston.
Mixed Chair, I move to include how the holiday moved from the last Thursday of November to the fourth Thursday of November.
All right, would the assembly like to hear how the holiday moved from the last Thursday to the fourth Thursday? All in favor, please raise your order of service. Very good. All opposed? The motion carries.
Okay, it's like this. 5 times out of 7, the fourth Thursday in November is the last Thursday. The other 2 times, like this year, November has 5 Thursdays, and then the fourth one is not the last one. The holiday moved from the last Thursday to the fourth Thursday in 1941. Franklin Roosevelt made the change because November 1941 also, like this year, had 5 Thursdays, and by moving the holiday up 1 week, he gave merchants a longer Christmas shopping season every year with 5 Thursdays in November.
The chair recognizes the delegate from Waterbury.
Mixed Chair, I move the following resolution. Resolved, that those present at this worship service of First Unitarian Church of Des Moines give thanks for all the good in our lives and all the blessings we enjoy. That we remember also the pain and loss of the Indigenous people, and that our list of gratitudes include thanks that we have the capacity to face the truths of the past, to learn from them to love others better, and love the rich diversity of humanity and of life.
The motion is resolved that those present at this worship service of First Unitarian Church of Des Moines give thanks for all of the good in our lives and all the blessings we enjoy. That we remember also the pain and the loss of Indigenous people, and our list of gratitudes include thanks that we have the capacity to face the truths of the past, to learn from them, to love others better, and love the rich diversity of humanity and of life. Motions of this type require a second. Is there a second? We have a second. All in favor of the motion, raise your order of service. All opposed? The motion carries. Seeing no one else at the microphone and there being no further business at this assembly, this storytelling session stands adjourned until it's time to review our Christmas story.
Sometimes you feel happy, sometimes you feel sad. And those are opposite feelings, and life brings them both. They're usually not at the same time. Usually being happy means not being sad, and being sad means not being happy. How about these two? Being grateful and remembering suffering. These are not even opposites at all. They are the natural expressions, the natural extensions of each other. There is much to be grateful for. Air. Take a breath and be thankful for air. Thank you, air. And we have trees and sunshine to be grateful for, and the beauty of this world. Cardinals and nuthatches and chipmunks. Thank you, trees. Thank you, sunshine. Thank you, cardinals, nuthatches, chipmunks. Gratitude chases out loneliness. You can't be lonely when you're feeling thankful, because as soon as you say thank you have company, companions, friends, the air, the trees, the birdies, and wee beasties, your company. And compassion also chases out loneliness. Caring about other people, caring about whether they suffer and are treated unfairly, chases out loneliness. Compassion brings other people into our lives, even if only in our imagination. We have company. Thankfulness recognizes the companionship that's all around us. Compassion reaches out to extend our companionship outward. For as the world is our good company, it makes us want to be good company for the world. So gratitude and compassion, thankfulness and remembering suffering and unfairness are not opposites. They naturally go together, for they are both about having company in our life. We are not alone. We have the companionship of everything that we are grateful for and everything we have compassion for. When I was a child, the extended family always had a few unrelated guests gathered around the table for Thanksgiving dinner each year. And my mom found a recipe for oyster stew one year early on and liked it so much she made it every year thereafter. So I know it's weird, but in my mind, Thanksgiving is associated with oyster stew, as well as with the usual turkey cranberry sauce. So thank you, oysters, and thank you, Mom. And we would go around the table and talk about what we were thankful for. I don't remember if it ever came up at the Thanksgiving tables where I was then, but it seemed a common thing around Thanksgiving to talk about being grateful for how well we're doing when others are doing so much worse. And that seems weird to me. I suppose the point is to remind us not to take our blessings for granted. And that's a good point. But the even better point is to be reminded that none of us are free until all of us are free. As long as there are others doing worse, then we're doing worse. As long as any being isn't treated fairly, none of us has the blessings of living in a world where everyone is treated fairly. We have the great good fortune to be able to care. The greatest blessing is to have the capacity for compassion. As Isabel Call said in the invocation that Eliot read, we celebrate Thanksgiving because gratitude is essential to human life. But grief is essential for healing our history of violence. It's really hard to be thankful and sorrowful at the same time, but this is life. Sometimes joy and sorrow come together. Actually, I would say, if you're paying attention, joy and sorrow always come together. When we seem to be having only joy or only sorrow, it's because we're not paying attention to the other. But it's always there. Joy and sorrow manifest as gratitude and compassion. Gratitude and compassion are dishes best served together. May you find them both amply supplied at your Thanksgiving table. Amen.
Our closing hymn is number 151, I Wish I Knew How. Please join me in saying our closing words. In unison. I'll give you a second. We are one after all. Together we suffer, together exist, and forever will create one another.
May our hearts be filled with gratitude, with compassion, and a quick readiness to revise our stories. Go in peace.